Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and it should come as no surprise to my audience that it has now been ruled that Assange stays. And we all knew this was coming. He's not going anywhere, despite the fact that he should have been released on the 22nd, but this is all a show. And of course the excuse is being made, well, he might leave. Well, since the crimes he's been charged with are illegal, immoral, and really non-existent, they're make-believe, calling him a cyber terrorist for encouraging people to share the truth with others, I thought I would have the founder of Slow News Day, this is the channel right here, Steve Poikonen. He is a writer, activist, and host of that daily show, and he's the co-host of Free Assange Vigil series, in which I was on this week in the Action for Assange tweets out there. He is dedicated to delivering news and information from outside the narratives that divide, influence, and impact our lives. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, Jason, I'm doing good, man, despite the unfortunate circumstances. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you, too. So, obviously, this came as no surprise. What will be next in the legal battles for Assange right now?
So, at this point, we're hoping that because his status as a political prisoner has changed a little bit, and this is no longer about the sham of detaining him for skipping out on bail, but holding him for U.S. extradition, that he will be allowed contact with his American lawyer, which he has not been, that he will be put off of solitary confinement for 21 to 23 hours a day, and that because he is awaiting extradition, will be treated more like a prisoner who is doing that, as opposed to someone who is a high-level detainee for a crime committed in England.
Gotcha. So tell people how, first of all, how you got involved in all of this, number one, what these vigils are all about, and how people can take part in real activism, because obviously there is not a spotlight in this country on this issue in a positive manner for Assange at all. And really, the general public has become apathetic and subservient to the war machine when it comes to this issue, if not all but uninformed, because a lot of people who are on the quote-unquote left, who maybe were in Code Pink, maybe on Assange's side when he was exposing Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib, no longer are so because he worked with the evil Russians, Steve.
So if you go to WikiLeaks right now and you type in Russia or Vladimir Putin, you will find tens of thousands of different hits. But you're absolutely right. The narrative surrounding Assange has had everything to do with this creation by media of his personality and character, and absolutely nothing to do with the veracity of information in WikiLeaks or the effect that should have had globally on regular everyday people. So I got involved with the Free Assange Vigil series because the two people that co-founded Action for Assange, Andrew Smith and Taylor Hudak, had reached out to me to ask me if I would be a part of it. I am somewhat of a smartass, and they wanted an element of humor on the show with them. And I have been a vocal supporter of Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and WikiLeaks in general for a number of years, and have kind of existed on this this fringe of internet writers and commenters, and where we all try to get this message out and face, the routine censorship and targeted shadow banning and leading up to surveillance that everyone involved in activism will experience if they keep being an activist.
So now we basically have these 14 indictments that accuse Assange of some sort of cyber terrorism by tweeting out there that there would be rewards for documentation, et cetera, et cetera. What are your feelings of this Butowsky lawsuit that, we had the recordings of Hirsch before saying there was indeed an FBI document naming Seth Rich. In this lawsuit, we now find out that his brother Aaron Rich also apparently not only helped him set up the Dropbox, but the eBay payment that got the full load of information to Assange. And he's also naming Andrew McCabe as the source for Hirsch. Now, this is huge because, number one, in public, McCabe has gone along with this story and been one of the biggest critics of Trump, trying to justify all this spying because Russia! On the other hand, is he really playing both sides of the fence and trying to get this information out there because he may be one of the few people that would be allowed to see it due to its classification level? Because as of right now, we spent over $10 fucking million to find out that we had to go with 100 pages of obstruction of justice of a crime that wasn't committed, with a one-page smear job about Assange and Seth Rich, maybe a page and a half, depending on how big the print is on your version. Okay, and we spent more than on the 9/11 Commission, right? We spent all this money, we can't find anything, and now McCabe might get indicted.
I couldn't be happier that McCabe might get indicted. As to whether or not he was the cutout or the source of this information, I think that's something that we're going to have to wait and see as the Butowsky suit expands. I did find that whole entire I guess, revelation, incredibly fascinating. The context of that lawsuit or of the complaint itself is something that I believe that everyone should read, because there's some information in there along with the with the Cy Hirsch audio that the American people just will never find anywhere else other than by going to independent media or going directly to the blog that links to the complaint.
Yeah, and people, listen, this is what you need to do. This is why we do this on this page, Steve. Often when we're talking about these lawsuits in depth, we'll go down, find the public PDF, go through not only the subsections that are important to the AKA media or even alt media, but we'll go through and at least search the key terms to see if this was brought up somewhere else so we can kind of go around. You know, I don't always have time for the big picture on a 450-page affidavit, you know what I mean? However, there is a good way. I mean, in an hour, 2 hours time, you can be more informed than about 99.99% of the general public out there, literally 1 in 1,000, if not 10,000, on these very important global issues. And I think that's the big problem, because there isn't a megaphone for the fact, I mean, that should be front page news. Seymour Hirsch, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, allegedly names McCabe as source in Seth Rich accusation. How many papers would that sell in the print media? I mean, yeah. But you won't hear about Fox News. That Cy Hirsch, what's that?
People forget that Cy Hirsch broke the My Lai massacre. People forget that Cy Hirsch is one of the more dedicated, more honest investigative journalists, more uncompromised investigative journalists that we've had for years. So for him to be making these statements, and for the reaction in U.S. or world media to be collective crickets, should be snapping the heads up of any awake individual on the planet going, I've got to see this.
Absolutely, and that's not that he's perfect. But again, who did publish the Abu Ghraib abuses that Manning got out into the public? It was Hirsch. Let me repeat that. It was Hirsch. I realize we're almost a decade out from those reports. And again, most people in the last 3 years have been put into this Russian fear fervor. It's almost like they took that terrorism and Al-Qaeda and they shifted a little bit over to ISIS and Assad, even though they're supposed to be battling each other. But hell, most people would have no idea where Syria is on a map, let alone that we're actually involved in a military conflict there. So what the hell, we'll roll the dice, right?
Yeah.
And we won't even talk about those issues as this very real one is going on. We don't talk about Guantanamo Bay anymore. In fact, the only time it came up in the news is the fact that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his 4 alleged co-conspirators will now have their show trials in 2021. What are we doing in the streets to make people aware of this? Because unfortunately, even the keyboard cowboys are at a huge disadvantage because the media has framed it that conservatives are being silent. No.
Yeah.
Mint Press, The Mind Unleashed, people that are exposing war crimes and criminal corruption in government on both sides. They're the real target of this censorship.
So they will, and you're absolutely right, Jason. They'll hold up a nefarious or if not physically ugly in terms of their speech, individual that they've deplatformed and say, we've got the bad guy. We won, score for democracy. And what they've done along the way is they've taken away hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of anti-war voices, pro-Palestinian voices on the left that were also delivering information counter to their narrative. And it's this bait and switch dog and pony show that's designed to make regular people and the pussy hat NPR liberals comfortable with censorship and comfortable with deplatforming anyone for any speech that the government or the very serious journalists find to be really in their way.
Exactly. And, I forgot to mention, talk about the left, but you're less likely to find Media Roots with Robbie and Abby Martin. You're less likely to know about her film, Gaza Fight for Freedom. You're not seeing 21st Century Wire being spread as much on Facebook and Twitter and these other platforms that clearly didn't have a left or right bias. They were clearly targeting what? The military-industrial complex. I get that, Media Roots and Abby, they're a little left-leaning, but I'm doing a video later today on the fact that Trump is now bragging that he wanted to go more hardcore on Venezuela and Cuba than Bolton on Twitter. This is the madness. It's like, hey, by the way, just so you guys know, my dick was swinging bigger when we're talking about going military invasion or coup d'etat on Maduro. And I'm thinking to myself, this is madness. The public should be horrified. We have a president that wants to interfere in South American politics yet again and declare somebody a president who is not fucking elected there on behalf of our interests and the corporate interests that surround us.
This is on the heels of an announcement in Amazon development, a partnership between the United States and Brazil, as the Amazon has been burning for weeks on end. Trump comes out and says, I wanted to go all in on Venezuela, and Bolton was countering me on that, so I had to get rid of him because we weren't being loud enough war criminals. At the same time, we're making deals with Brazil to capitalize on the destruction of 20% of the Earth's lungs.
And again, when we talk about the loans out there and, the de facto, I guess you could call it the geopolitical situation. Right now, they are, propping China up as this big corporate enemy and espionage enemy. But let's be honest, we've conducted ourselves in South America so much, taking their resources, making it an inability for them ever to pay back any of those supposed loans. Who was it who wrote Economic Hitman? John Perkins. John Perkins in Economic Hitman really described how we would go into these nations, and whenever, a third world dictator, a second world dictator would dare oppose us, I don't know, Noriega, we basically just go in there, we take them out, and Noriega, I believe, was supposed to be released over a decade ago. I can look that up while you give your commentary on that. But I think that's more difficult to do in this day and age. So, could they go in there and just take out Maduro and do the same thing they did with Noriega? Is that plausible?
They've tried. They've already tried. There was an attempt to assassinate Maduro by drone, I believe, in 2015. You're right. There's a little bit more daylight on it, so they can't just walk in and overthrow. Although with Noriega, they surrounded his compound and they were blaring music at him. They were trying to get him to come out. They were playing like I Fought the Law and the Law Won, and Mommy Never Told Me There'd Be Days Like This and shit like that. Like the U.S. military was trolling Manuel Noriega outside of his compound. With Maduro, they could always do what they did to Hugo Chavez, which is kidnap him and refuse to release him until Venezuela's oil has been privatized. But with direct, we've seen it. We saw a direct coup action take place when Guaido, when he tried to get the military to walk away from Maduro and march with him to the capital. The reason it's failing, I think, is because of what you said. Nobody knows who the fuck Juan Guaido is. How are you going to give your allegiance?
He's the legitimate leader of Venezuela, Steve. Don't you know? He's the God, Dave. What do you mean you don't know? He's the legitimate leader. There was a press conference. If you disagree with that, you must be with the terrorists, man.
Have to come out of George Washington University in a Langley-sanctioned training program before they can be recognized as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. That's where we're headed now.
All right, my man. Tell people about your show. Slow News Day is the channel. They can go check that out on YouTube, what you're doing there, and explain to people how they can get involved, not only in the nighttime vigil series that you guys are doing, but the on the ground activism that we really need to get people into.
Absolutely. So Slow News Day started because there's such a void in media of people who, hold up or shine a light on the activists and the artists and the organizers and entertainers and journalists that operate outside of the narrative, with no funding and relying as little as possible on mainstream news sources. They'll do what you do and go straight to the documents and then form their opinion based off of the documents instead of the spin. And so that's what my show tries to do in my interviews. And then the live streams, if there's something that's happening throughout the course of the day that I feel needs to be addressed specifically from that perspective, from outside the narrative, then that's what the live streams are about. What people can do, aside from tuning in Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on the Action for Assange YouTube channel to watch these vigils, we promote every week the concept of decentralized activism. And what decentralized activism means is you and a couple of your friends going out to perform an action, whether that's hanging flyers or posters all over your town, trying to meet with a press club to get them to issue a statement on behalf of Julian Assange or whistleblowers in general, or even attending large events with a goal in mind to raise awareness. If you are an activist engaging in a decentralized fashion, you are much, much less likely to be subject to the infiltration that large organizations always find themselves in. If you go to actionforassange.com, the website should be, we got our website really screwed up. We got hacked, we got taken down. I think it's back up now. But we have a handful of different activism tips. I highly recommend everyone read Freeing Julian Assange by Susie Dawson. The third part of that report is an activist how-to field guide and a first-person testimonial for how to deal with the trials and tribulations of being an activist.
All right, my brother. Well, we got to have you on again on the next big legal battle when that comes out, and a lot more. And I know you want me to do your show, and I will be doing that.
That'd be great.
So get at me at the next time. How would you like to close it out?
I would like to just let everyone know that Julian Assange is a political prisoner who faces 175 years on Espionage Act charges that are completely fabricated out of whole cloth for printing the crimes of empire. And we should be collectively outraged over that. We should be hollering at our media. We should be hollering at our leaders. And if we allow free press to die, we have no means of recourse to combat these narratives.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining me. Guys, there it is at Slow News Day. Go check them out on Twitter, but definitely go subscribe to the channel right now. I'm doing 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 videos a day on various subject matter. I know some people got mad at me. I streamed the video games, but I told you I was maybe going to do it if people encouraged me. And Nick Waits with that $100 super chat said go for it, so I did. Don't worry, no video games today, tomorrow, probably ever again. And you can follow me on Twitter and check out all of my documentary films, Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, New World Order Defined, Shade the Motion Picture, over here in the playlist, the documentaries, and much more. And if you like what I do, you can support me. $5, $10, $15 means the world to me. The big donations, they're also awesome. Thank you so much. It keeps me going. And I got videos coming out later on Jonathan Pollard. I got videos on Trump coming out. I think we're going to do an R. Kelly video. So stay tuned. We're going to be busy this Saturday. And I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much.